Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 23rd of January 2024, and these are the stories that we'll be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with day 109 of the conflict between Gaza, Palestine and Israel. And of course, we'll be highlighting the number of casualties, we'll be highlighting the dearth of humanitarian aid and medical aid to the people of Palestine. We'll be also highlighting the displacements of the 1.9 million plus people that has happened as far as Gaza is concerned, the diplomatic efforts that are happening, but will they reap the results? Then we'll be talking about the fresh strikes on the Houthis that has happened in Yemen from the United States and the United Kingdom. As far as Israel is also concerned, there's a huge hue and cry from the Israeli side because there is some people put the estimates at 24, other put the estimate at 21 Israeli soldiers who've been killed, which is the biggest death toll as far as Israeli soldiers are concerned in 24 hours. Qatar and Egypt are trying to have some kind of a ceasefire as far as the atrocities committed by Israel is concerned. Whether that happens or not is another question altogether. The Arab League has also called for a complete sustainable ceasefire. It has urged the UN Security Council to adopt binding decisions to stop the wide and systemic crimes that are being committed by the Israeli occupation forces against the Palestinian people. This and more will be discussed as part of our first segment. Our second story concerns the growing majoritarianism in India under Narendra Modi. Now, we all know of the inauguration of the Ram temple that happened, and of course it was participated by Narendra Modi and his BJP right-wing people who are extremely close to him. Then it was also participated by many people from the Hindi film industry. The fact also remains, it is an unfortunate fact, but the fact also remains that it is the same place where there used to be a mosque that was razed to the ground in 1992. And a couple of decades later, they construct a temple at the same place. At the same time, we hear of all the atrocities that are happening as far as the minorities in India is concerned. Many similarities between what is happening in Palestine and what is happening in India, but not to that extent, but the whole mechanism and machinations are extremely similar. Pakistan and has also issued a statement and has slammed the construction of the Ram temple in Ayodhya. The act, as the Foreign Office statement says, highlights the marginalization of the Indian Muslims. We also know that the elections are going to happen in India in a couple of months' time, so it is being widely seen as a tactic by the BJP government. The opposition, including the Congress party and other parties, have also severely criticized this move by the BJP. This and more will be discussed as part of our second story. Then we'll be talking about a major earthquake that has jolted China's western Xinjiang province. 7.0, some people 7.1 magnitude earthquake that damaged over 120 buildings in the areas. Many aftershocks that happened as well, that created a huge wave of fear amongst the people as well. Rescuers are combing through the rubble to find whether there is any sign of people under the rubble where they can find more victims or not. 6 people have been hurt, only 2 have sustained serious injuries as far as this is concerned. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the latest situation as far as the conflict between Israel and Palestine is concerned. We are in day 109 of this whole conflict. To discuss more on different aspects of this war, whether it be diplomacy, whether it be the bloodshed, whether it be the lack of humanitarian aid, whether it be the lack of medical aid and more. We've been joined by Air Commodore retired Basit Raza. Abbasi sahab, he's a senior analyst. He's right here with us in the studios. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. I'd like to begin with the Arab League that has called for a complete and sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. This is a statement that they have taken out. They say that there was an extraordinary meeting that was held of the Arab League in Palestine, and it has now called on Israel to curb its plans and efforts aimed at the forced displacement of the Palestinians. It has also urged the United Nations Security Council, and I repeat, not the United Nations General Assembly, but the Security Council, to adopt binding decisions to stop this wide-ranging systemic crimes that are being committed by the Israeli forces in Palestine. What's your, I'd like to understand your take on all of this. The Arab League is asking the United Nations Security Council to put binding restrictions on, when we know that there are parties to the Security Council that have always vetoed anything that goes for or against Palestine? Secondly, how important do you feel is the role of the Arab League, if we even put aside for a moment the United Nations?
About Arab League, I can't say much because they comprise, many of them are those who have been thoroughly beaten by Israel, and I think the resolve to fight has completely died down. So what they are left with is only the lip service, and that's what the Arab League did. They're demanding something which nobody would grant them. We know Security Council is made of 5 veto wielding members, and 3 of them, America, UK and France, they actually, their presidents, their heads of states visited Israel immediately after the attack which took place when Israel started its aggression, to support them, and they have not sort of wavered in their support yet. So I don't put much hope or anything tangible out of this resolution. It's a paper resolution. It will remain that way.
All right. What about the extension of this whole conflict beyond Palestine, in the Red Sea, even beyond the Red Sea, whether it be the Hezbollah, whether it be the Houthis, whether it be the United Kingdom and the United States that are now launching fresh strikes on the Houthis in Yemen. So other countries are slowly and steadily getting involved in all of this. President Biden says that airstrikes will continue, but he has acknowledged that they will not be halting Houthi attacks. We know that the Houthis also launched 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles last week at a US-owned tanker ship. Do you feel that there is going to be no ceasefire as a result of this? B, how much do you feel of an extension or a regionalization of all of this conflict beyond Palestine?
You have asked 2 main questions. Once it's spreading into the region. Again, I would emphasize that no country has stood up against Israel in this whole fiasco. No Muslim country, no other country. The people who are fighting are Hamas, who is not the whole of Palestinians, but a group. There is Hezbollah, who is a proxy, and they are in Lebanon, and Houthis, who are again representing someone else. So the countries who are supporting these groups are themselves sitting tight, comfortable in their borders. So there's nobody has in real terms stood up and fired a bullet against Israel. So this is as far as the spread into regional issues. The spread has taken place, yes, but by whom? Israel bombed Lebanon and killed the Hamas leaders staying there. And they also killed some of the leaders, pro-Iranian leaders in Syria. The deputy of Qasem Soleimani was killed there. So this is in a way the spread. And if you talk of spreading, yes, there was another spread into the Middle East region when Iran fired missiles in Iraq, Syria and Pakistan. You can call it a spread. But these are very small flares in a raging fire which is in Gaza. And that is only there.
But will those flames become fire as well?
I don't see it happening.
Okay.
But what I am waiting for is now the 3.5 months old war has entered into a phase which I would say is a phase of brinkmanship. Who blinks first? Okay. And Israel has no less pressure on it. Netanyahu is a man under severe pressure from his own domestic his populace who are demanding. You must have seen that the relatives of these people who have been taken hostages, they stormed Knesset and they asked those guys who are sitting there and discussing various issues that what are you doing sitting on your chairs, and what are you doing about the people who are captive there. So Israel is under intense pressure, and for Netanyahu it's a question of survival because he has so many cases against him. So he has to cling to power, and the way to clinging to power is to export that extremist elements. It's the most racist regime that Israel has ever had in the history.
Whenever this regime comes, everybody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, Basit Raza, Abbasi Saab, there are then countries like the New Zealand that on the one hand are deploying a 6-member defense team to the Middle East as part of an international coalition to uphold maritime security in the Red Sea. On the other hand, they are calling for humanitarian truce, humanitarian pauses, and urgent need for further steps toward a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. How important is the role of countries such as New Zealand or others that on the one hand also want to regulate the mechanism in the Red Sea, but are also calling for ceasefire and humanitarian truce in Palestine? Will their voice be heard?
Yes, I think they are more credible voices than the Muslim voices like the Arab Leagues and others, because they are only giving the lip service. These countries, and we claim religious or some sort of bond with them. We say that our hearts throb with them and they bleed for their losses and sufferings. But those countries who are non-Muslims, like I salute South Africa, I mean, they went to the International Court of Justice and sort of got a declaration from there that this is a genocide.
At the ICC also there's another case.
At the ICC there's another case. So these countries, they are not affiliated with Palestine that way, but they are humanitarian, more humanitarian than the brutal regimes that we see in the most of the leading countries of the world who are at the beck and call of Israel.
Because you know, even in the ICC, it's Chile and Mexico.
That's right. You know, Pasma mil gaye Kabe ko sanam khane se. I mean, something like that.
All right, let's talk about the atrocities that are being committed by Israel in Gaza, also in the West Bank. The Nasser hospital in southern Gaza is under Israeli attack. Military has at the same time announced it's the single day for troops, for deadliest single day for troops, because as per certain quarters it says 24, others say it's 21 soldiers who've been killed. Is Israel going to go for further atrocities or aggressive revenge because a certain number of their soldiers has now been killed in a single day? Actually, I mean, to add to the misery of the people of Palestine, when you just look at what they're doing, you know, it's, I haven't seen an example like this in recent decades.
That's right. I would say it in very short lines. Israel is losing every day and Hamas is winning every day. I agree, 25,000 innocent civilians have been killed.
65,000 plus have been injured.
Injured, yes, and they are homeless. I mean, this is a very severe winter over there. I mean, we are shivering here in Rawalpindi, Islamabad, and that is a minus temperatures over there. So, there's a very, very desperate situation, but nevertheless, their sacrifices, you know, the heartening thing is that 70% of the Hamas infrastructure, military infrastructure is still intact, and that's a sort of a slur. It's a shame for Israel that with all its might, Hamas doesn't have an air force. Israel has the most modern air force,
and the most modern weapons as well.
More weapons, and they have incessant supply from USA, who has said keep firing these stuff and we'll keep replenishing it. So despite that, so that's why I say that every day Israel is using, and now is the time of brinkmanship. And I think if the Hamas leadership is able to hold on for a little longer, I wouldn't be able to predict a time, but not as much as has gone by, much less than that would settle this issue. And but if Hamas blinks first, then of course it will be a disaster for the Palestinians.
All right. Now, if we add the Houthis and Hezbollah to it as well, the Houthis confirm British and American strikes on 18 targets, including several in Sana'a. Promise these are not going to go unanswered. Do you feel that we are going to see the involvement of more such factions as far as this crisis is concerned?
As far as Houthis are concerned, there are two sides of it. One is their attacks on the shipping, because we know that Bab el-Mandab is the choke point, and all the European and trade from West, it has to pass through it to reach Asia. And there's a very strange dynamics. If you give me a little time, I'll delve on it a little bit. Because the 70% of the shipping that passes through Suez is actually the Russian oil which is going to China and India. And Russia is badly affected. And the Eilat, which is a seaport closest to Gulf of Aqaba, is virtually deserted Israeli port. So Houthis attacks have been effective. They have actually created a lot of problem for Israel and for the West in general, and even for that matter for Russia. Having said that, now what the American and UK, they are the leading forces of that coalition which is trying to contain the Houthis. They are striking selected targets, but Houthis have endured for many years incessant bombardment. So they are used to it, they are not going to be deterred by it. But their attacks, they actually shake the Western world. Even if one missile is fired onto a ship, the whole Western business community shakes and shivers. And the cost of insurance, freight and everything is multiplying every day. And you understand that if they don't go through Suez Canal, they have to go through all the way through the Africa. And the shipping time increases by as much as 2 weeks. So you can appreciate the amount of sort of pressure which is being generated for the Western countries to resolve this issue. And that is why I say, and I say with full conviction, that if they are Hamas is going to last for a few weeks more, I think things would be more favorable for them.
All right. The Palestinian Education Ministry says 4,551 students have been killed, 8,193 have been wounded since the beginning of the aggression on the 7th of October. The World Food Programme warns that there is going to be a risk of famine in parts of the Gaza Strip, and this risk is going to remain for some time till proper aid comes, because the aid that the Israelis did let go through is not enough for all those who have been displaced, for all those who are in desperate need of food, of water, of medicine. How do you see this situation evolving? On the one hand, you do say that the groups need to remain strengthened for the next couple of weeks. But what happens to these people who are in emergency need of food and water and medicine? And the way the Israelis are killing them, whether it be young men, young women, the students, as I just announced, and with extreme disregard of whosoever comes in front of them. What is the fate of those civilians?
My heart bleeds for them, like anybody in this world who is human and humane. It's very unfortunate. But look, when you are dominated by a power which is so brutal and so ruthless, there are two options for you. Either you succumb to their demands or you fight. And the fight is very lopsided. And that's what we are seeing. But all the battles have been of freedom have been won that way. It's full of sacrifices. Unfortunately, every child that dies in Palestine, in Gaza, every woman that dies, every boy or man dies, it's a great loss. And but they are writing their history with their blood. And I hope one day their efforts would bear fruits.
All right. Now, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has met with counterparts from Iran, Turkey and Lebanon ahead of a United Nations Security Council meeting on the Middle East issue. Can this trio make some headway in your point of view? Or do you feel those who are backing Israel in Israel are strong enough, so strong that they can encounter any opposition whatsoever?
So long they seem that way. I was about a month back, I was in UK, and I have seen very large protests, very substantial, and not by the diaspora only, the white British participating in that wholeheartedly. But the stance of their government has not changed, neither of Rishi Sunak nor of the opposition leader, the Labour Party leader, Sir Kaim, whatever his name is. So this is the dynamics which is there, that public is actually angered and rising against this genocide, but the governments still remain undeterred because their vital interests are linked with Israel. Israel is a ill-begotten child of these nations. They will keep supporting whatever it does. And it seems that this child has come to bite them now. It will bite them hard, because the lessons of history are learned not in days, but they are written on stone, and they come sooner or later. And we are having election years. We are going to have election in UK, and we are going to have election in US also. And I think there will be some influence on this. but that's a long term thing. In the short term, I think what you talk of Security Council, as I mentioned, that Russia is also suffering because of closure of Bab el Mandab path. So they would want some sort of way in which at least the shipping could be sustained, because Russia is selling oil to these countries only because it is selling it cheap. But that cheap oil is now becoming expensive because of the longer route, either the longer route that they take, or because the heavier insurance, which is up to 1% of the total cargo value, which is very high. And it's going to rise further as the day they fire another missile, the insurance cost rises.
All right.
So this is a cascading thing.
All right. In this whole cascade of violence that is happening in Palestine, whether it be Gaza or the West Bank, you talked of the people who are the victims, the Palestinians, but on the other hand, we've also got the Israeli civilians, who are Israeli settlers who are committing acts of violence against the Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. Now, France's foreign minister says he is hopeful that the EU will impose sanctions on these settlers. But how important do you feel is this issue of the Israeli settlers who are also trying to wreak havoc in the lives of the Palestinians in the occupied West Bank?
Actually, these settlers are the real havoc, because Israel, since Israel doesn't meet its commitments, but it's actually they are they want to annihilate Hamas. They want to eliminate Hamas because they see it as a threat to their own existence. So they are actually making sure that West Bank is better looked after.
All
so
right.
Israeli government somehow or the other is more laid back in sort of inflicting any damage on them. It's the settlers who are more active, and they are the ones who are more often on the front of all these disasters that take place there. There are a lot of killings and arsons which go on in there, and it's these settlers who do that. As far as stance of France is concerned, what they are trying to do, France is also actually a backer of Israel, because UK and USA are in the front line, and France is in the toe, but they are actually supporting the Israeli regime. So not much hope from that side, but I want to sort of tell you that Palestinians are in three parts. One part is in Gaza, one is in West Bank, and one is their diaspora, which is, so Israel, if it thinks that they can annihilate the Palestinians, it cannot, because their target is only Gaza. And in that Gaza, their target is only Hamas. And there are many proposals floating for settling the issue. And one of that is that give a safe passage to the leadership, Hamas leadership, to get out of Gaza, and then we can sort of negotiate.
All right.
So, but these are not going to work.
All right. You feel this is not going to work?
No, Hamas will not accept it, because after all that they have gone through, and the way they have sort of fought back, and they have been giving sacrifices, but on Israel side, even if one of their soldiers died, it's a catastrophe for them.
And that is why they are here. You were making this hue and cry on the 21 soldiers who have been killed in on these 24 hours. But no hue and cry on this 25,000 plus people who've been killed, on the 60,000 plus who've been injured, and the scores of families that have been displaced, and the lives that have been shattered. This is going to take a decade, if not more, to stabilize itself once this conflict is over. And I really hope that this becomes such a stain on Israel that Israel and their coming generations remember this and refrain from committing such an act in the future. I really wish for that, and I hope that those powers that understand the reality and the gravity of the situation do the needful. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us, Air Commodore retired Basit Abbasi, senior analyst, to have come and to have discussed 109 days. Can you imagine 109 days have passed since this whole conflict, and every day the number of casualties is increasing, and every day we hear of new issues concerning health, concerning lack of food, water and medicine. This is a situation as despicable as they come. Thank you, sir, to have talked to me about this and to tell our viewers also. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns, ladies and gentlemen, the construction of the Ram temple in Ayodhya. Now, there is a lot of criticism as far as this whole pom-pomming of this inauguration of the Ram Mandir was concerned, and we all know that this is the same place where in 1992 mosque, the famous Babri mosque, was massacred. To highlight different aspects of it, we've been joined by Brigadier Retired Waqar Hassan Khan. He's a senior analyst. Sir, can you hear us properly? All right, Brigadier Saab, there's some communication issue as far as this our conversation is concerned. So we are going to try to come back to you with a better voice from your end as far as that is concerned. Our Foreign Office says that the Ram Temple is an affront to Indian Muslims. Now, the statement adds that the inauguration symbolizes the rise of Hindu nationalism and reflects the political and religious aspirations of the BJP and its supporters. I say and quote, the construction of the temple on such a historically disputed site underscores the ongoing transformation in India's religious and cultural landscape, heavily influenced by the BJP's ideology. The statement also expresses concern of the state of minorities in India, adding that the inauguration has intensified concerns about the treatment of Muslims in India. It also says that the reports of discrimination and violence against Muslims are linked with Hindu nationalism and raises significant questions about the future of secularism and minority rights in India. We'll be going back to our guest. Before that, let's watch a short report as far as the construction of the Ram Temple and the destruction of the Babri Mosque is concerned.
The Indian opposition, led by Congress Party, has turned down an invitation from the Modi government to attend the divisive consecration of Ram Temple on the site of the 400 years old Babri Mosque, demolished by hundreds of thousands of frenzied Hindus over 30 years ago. The Indian government, run by Hindu extremists, have allotted a piece of land miles away from the demolished mosque to Muslims to build a new mosque, which they plan to start building in May. The Congress says the Ram Temple drama is staged by Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party and its Hindu extremist mentor, RSS, to secure a third stint in office. According to BBC, demolition of Babri Mosque was one of India's darkest days since its independence in 1947, as the newly built Ram Temple sits on one of country's biggest religious fault lines when thousands of people were killed in violent clashes. Across India, millions of Hindus are gearing up to celebrate the controversial inauguration day like a big festival, while employees of federal government have been given a half day. For Muslims, who make up India's biggest minority, the day evokes fear and painful memories. Many will send their children out of the city Ayodhya, fearing tensions might be stoked when the streets fill with Hindus from around the country. Scores of Hindus had faced charges in the wake of violence after Babri Mosque demolition and spent time in jail, but no one was convicted. And the zealots are adamant they did not break any law. Santo Adobe was one of them. He boasts that they did not go to any other country to attack places of worship there, and they remained within their country's boundaries. Muslims regularly offered prayers in the Babri Mosque until 1949, when idols of Lord Ram were placed in it, allegedly by Hindu priests. The gates of the mosque were then closed. In 1986, they were reopened, many believe at the behest of the Congress Party, then in power, in a rumored attempt to woo the Hindu majority. Then in 1990, the BJP, then just a small political party with little electoral success, spearheaded a mass campaign for a Hindu temple at the site. The campaign would later be seen as one of the key moments which transformed BJP into the virtually unbeatable political giant it is today, which now has Modi at its head. Dubey showed a black and white photo that appeared in a newspaper of a group of men brandishing their weapons with raised arms, wide smiles on their faces. He says it was taken before the mosque was raised. For Ayodhya's Muslims, it was a day of terror.
Anwari Begum, now 65, says hundreds of thousands of men were all over Ayodhya. They had sticks, swords, and tridents. Our house was surrounded by them. We ran from our homes. I ran with my 6-month-old baby and small children. My husband was running behind us. When I turned, I saw that my husband had been caught by some men. Later, she found out that her husband, Muhammad Amin, had been killed, one of at least 17 Muslims who died in shocking violence in Ayodhya that day. Anwari said she came to know her husband's arms and legs were chopped off. She was dumped into a sack and taken away. We never found his body. Anwari has now forced her 30-year-old son to leave Ayodhya before inauguration.
Of course, we're discussing the inauguration of an incomplete Ram temple on the same place where the Babri Mosque was martyred in 1992. Whereas on the one hand, this is an affront to the Muslims of the world and also of India. On the other hand, the BJP continues its tactics to undermine the minorities in India while calling its country a pluralistic, democratic country. We have been joined by Brigadier retired Waqar Hassan Khan Sahab. Waqar Sahab, we were talking about the political opposition in India that is calling this a political gimmick. We couldn't understand you properly, so I'd really appreciate if you could rephrase your answer to this question.
I think it's more than a political gimmick. I think if we have discussed earlier that RSS has to demolish 4 walls of perception. And one is, of course, secularism of India, the other is the Muslim rule, the third is the British rule, and fourth is that they were ruled by very small nations. And if you look at, I think their assault has been very focused. One is on Muslim identity, culture, and any element of Muslim rule which is visible. Like now there is a movement again, 2 more mosques like Gyan Vapi Mosque and Idgah Mosque in Kashi and Mathura. And of course, Taj Mahal is also one of the targets. So any symbol of Muslim rule has to be demolished or erased from the memory of majority Hindu population. So that has been agenda of RSS since 1947-48, and since they have come to power, especially after 2014, it has intensified. If you look at Modi's speech, at Ayodhya and at the Ram Mandir, the way basically described, from secular India now it has shifted to Ram's India, or they call it the Ram Raj. So I think it is much more than what the opposition is saying, but there is a lot of pushback which is coming from within India and outside.
All right, Brigadier Sahab, whether there is opposition that is coming from inside or out, will it have any effect whatsoever as far as the politicking that is going on in India is concerned? We've got elections that are happening in India. Is this going to affect the BJP, or do you feel this incomplete or whatsoever inauguration of the Ram temple is going to have a positive effect on the voter bank of the BJP?
I think within India, it's the cow belt. Mainly, as we've discussed, barring the South India, the Northeast, and the Northwest. If you look at the center, the core, the cow belt, I think Modi has gained a lot of leverage, and it's going to help. But when it comes from the South, like M.K. Stalin, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, he was very critical about the event and the way it has been manipulated. And he's also said that we don't need this Sanatan Dharma because actually you are dividing India. So in the long run, I think India is going to suffer very badly because it's going to then start imploding different fault lines. And if you look at international community, international media, I think nobody appreciated it as such, although they covered the event like Al Jazeera or the Arab channels, CNN, BBC. Everybody was saying it's a controversial temple built on a controversial site. And the way Modi spent almost last 40 days in traveling from one mandir to another. Basically, he was building up for this big event. And then people started criticizing that if Prime Minister can be off for more than 30 days, what's the need of Prime Minister? Then it should be run, without a parliament. So that's a kind of pushback. But I think within Hindu cow belt, Modi is going to prevail, and that's very, very unfortunate for Indian secularism.
All right, well, secularism has never been there, at least since the last few years, so nor has pluralism, nor has democracy. Don't you feel all these notions have already been destroyed, if not already completely almost destroyed in India? At the same time, you talk about the international media that is talking about this. You mentioned the CNN and other channels. I'd like to also mention the Hindus for Human Rights, which is a US-based non-profit advocacy group. which was founded in 2019, that advocates for pluralism. It says that the Ram temple is being built on the ruins of a sacred medieval mosque destroyed by a Hindu nationalist mob on the long contested holy site in India. We are seeing this opposition that comes, as you yourself have said, but will this opposition have any impact on A, India's positioning on the geostrategic hub, B, on India's diplomacy or democracy, so-called?
I think overall perception, because this will never happen to India, internationally I think it will have a negative impact, and gradually people are understanding the way RSS handled inside and outside. There are, I think, messages for some of the Pakistan is very important, because people have started recalling Azad, Maulana, Azad, who was basically the Congressy politician and who had some prophecies regarding Pakistan. And Khalid also said that the Muslims have to, then they'll keep proving their loyalty to India and nobody will listen to them. So today I think Qaid-e-Azam has been proven right. Gandhiism is dying, and I would say Godse is now become the new avatar and which is represented by Modi. So overall I think within South Asia, if you look at the pushback coming from Maldives, there's a out India movement going on in Bangladesh right now. Pakistan is definitely, and then the way India tried to manipulate our neighbors, I think within South Asia it's an uncomfortable position, and even in the larger West, there is definitely a lot of apprehension the way Modi is moving, that ultimately if it's going to be an RSS-led India, it's going to have serious problems for the democratic world.
Our Foreign Office, sir, says that majoritarian actions have put a future of secularism in peril in India, and that the inauguration symbolizes a rise of Hindu nationalism and reflects the political and religious aspirations of BJP and its supporters. And also, the statement expresses concerns over the state of minorities in India. Any minority, Brigadier Sahab, whether it be Muslim or Christian or Sikh, or even Dalits, are no longer in a comfortable space whatsoever. When you add to the whole saffronization, the victimization of the minorities in India, what is their fate, in your point of view, post the elections in 2024?
Yeah, 2024, Modi is going to definitely get help. As I said, Core Belt mainly gives them more than 35 to 40% of the vote. That's a huge chunk. Otherwise, on the fringe, definitely they'll be pushed back from South, from Mamata Banerjee, from Northeast, from Indian Punjab, and all that. But I think in the long run, if you look at the minorities, we've discussed earlier also that other than the upper caste Hindus, 77% India is disenfranchised, which includes Muslims, Dalits, Christians, and even Shudras. So if you start disenfranchising, and if you look at even, I think, the courts, I think today we saw a court from the south in which there was, puja part happening in the high court. Imagine the judges, and so is happening with public figures. I've seen police officers wearing, basically attired like pandits and moving around. And this is, I think, also becoming a hallmark of Indian bureaucracy and judiciary and even the army. So it's going to be a very different India. But I feel that in the long run, definitely India is going to have very serious problem in justifying all whatever has happened yesterday, and then looking at the interests of the minorities, there is going to be a clash and a pushback.
What happens to the cause of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the cause of the Muslims in India, the cause of so many who are incarcerated? I just wanted to cite one example. I was going through the BBC and it talked about Omar Khalid, not myself, but a person who shares my name, who is an Indian activist who languishes in jail without bail or trial since 2016. In fact, he was one of the 5 Indian students charged with sedition for organizing a protest at his alma mater over the 2013 hanging of a Kashmiri man. Till date, he is still incarcerated, and there are thousands and thousands of examples of such people, especially Muslims, who are languishing in jails. What is their fate?
I think anybody, whether he's Muslim or anyone with a liberal thought, so other than, I think, Umar Khalid, is a very serious case, because I think he just supported one of the Kashmiris who was sentenced to death, and then later on he was arrested in 2020 on the old charges, and I think he was from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Look at the other liberals, what happened to non-Muslim liberals like Gauri Lankesh, Professor Pansare, Professor Kulburgi and Davulkar. They were massacred, they were assassinated by Sanatan Sanstha, one of their organization of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad.
We seem to have some kind of a technical issue, and we were discussing, of course, what is happening as far as the incarceration of not only Muslims but all others who have a sane voice, who are talking sense, and their voices are being muted. Yes, sir, you were saying.
Videos of
Yes, we are audible now. Let's continue. You were saying, sir, you were talking about the case of Omar, Khalid, and so many others who are languishing in jails.
also languishing in jail. And I've seen some videos of Muslim community where the Hindus, after this Ram Mandir inauguration, came on motorbikes and then started actually abusing Islam and our icons, using very, very derogatory language, Nauz Billah, against Allah Almighty and Prophet Muhammad. So this is where I think India is heading, and the entire world is watching, because these things cannot be hidden anymore. And I feel that Modi may be elected with a lot of pomp and show and two-third majority, but India, I think, has a very dark future.
All right. Thank you very much, Brigadier Waqar Hassan Khan Saab, senior analyst, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the inauguration of the Ram Mandir and how that puts in front of everybody the true face of this current government of the BJP in India, so-called secular, so-called pluralistic, so-called democratic India, wherein it shares none of the facets of all three. At the same time, all the minorities also are facing the brunt of the saffronization of India, which of course, as you yourself pointed out, sir, is no longer India, but it's Ram's India, is no longer the India that was a pluralistic India that included so many faiths, so many religions, so many castes, where in fact this is only one single, and that is that of the Hindus. And that has been the plan of the BJP and the RSS based philosophy of that the BJP follows since the very beginning. And slowly and steadily we are seeing the results of that, the way they are not only saffronizing India but also denying rights to any other minority, whether they be Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, or even the low caste Hindus. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. Let's come to our last story, and that concerns the 7 or 7.1 magnitude earthquake that has hit China's western Xinjiang province. A 7.1 magnitude earthquake jolted Wuxi County in Aksu Prefecture in the northwest China's Shangjing Uyghur Autonomous Region at 2:09 a.m. on Tuesday, Beijing time, according to the China Earthquakes Network Center. This epicenter was at a depth of 22 kilometers, was monitored at 41.26 degrees north latitude and 78.63 degrees east longitude. This main quake was of course followed by a succession of aftershocks which were as strong as 5.3 in magnitude. The epicenter is situated in a township in Wuxi County. According to the Xinjiang Earthquake Agency, the epicenter is approximately 50 kilometers from the county seat of Wuxi. Now, residential houses were also struck and were demolished. There were livestock sheds that collapsed in the epicenter, but no casualties have been reported. There have been people who have been injured, some seriously. The earthquake was also felt in various cities and prefectures across Xinjiang, including Urumqi, Hotan, and Kashgar. Residents in the regional capital, Urumqi, also reported feeling the shaking even on the 17th floor of their apartment buildings. The Wuxi County Fire and Rescue Brigade has promptly dispatched an advance team to the epicenter area, and the Prefecture Fire and Rescue Detachment has mobilized 60 people to reach the epicenter. We wish our brothers who have been affected by this earthquake all the very best, and I'm sure, as has been in the past, the Chinese authorities will take utmost care of them and do the needful. But of course our hearts go to them. They are nevertheless our Aryan brothers. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories, segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.